Today is June 24th, 2023, and we have breaking news of an armed military coup going down inside of the Russian Federation as we speak. Wagner leader Yevgeny Prigozhin is leading his Wagner mercenary force with a complement of 25,000 highly trained and seasoned veterans on a march to Moscow. The FSB has opened an investigation into Prigozhin for armed rebellion, meaning that this is verified information. This is the real deal. Let's unpack this information and the possibilities in today's short frontline update. First, I'm going to go through the events that led up to the situation, the current picture inside Russia, and the three possibilities of how this could all play out. This will be a shorter video update. I will probably have longer form content ready sometime in the next few days on the event as well as a frontline picture for you guys. But in the meantime, please be sure to hit both like and subscribe button, actions that are totally free for you to do but are a big help for me to grow the channel. Also be sure to hit that bell icon so you do not miss the important updates coming down the pipe. The situation started when Wagner leader Yevgeny Prigozhin released a video criticizing the Russian military high command, chiefly Sergei Shoigu, who is the acting defense minister, and Valery Gerasimov, the chief of the general staff of the Russian armed forces. To sum it up, blaming them for corruption and incompetence in executing the war along the way that has led to a high cost for the lives of Russian and Wagner troops on the front line. Shortly after, Wagner troops accused the Russian military of launching a rocket strike on their base, which was probably somewhere in the Donbass. This isn't an exact location. But this rocket strike happened, and they accused the Russian military of killing a large number of Wagner troops in that strike. Probably this was a training facility because Wagner has been removed from the front lines, and they have been training up for allegedly another offensive operation. Since then, we have had a succession of fascinating events. First, Wagner seized the southern city of Rostov-on-Don, which has a population of around 1 million people, and taking the facilities of the Russian Southern Military District located within the city. Since then, we have seen video of Wagner personnel moving through the city of Voronezh on the way to Moscow. Keep in mind, both of these cities are big logistical hubs for the Ukraine war. Since then, the most recent footage we have is of Wagner troops moving through Kolomna, which is a city in the Moscow region on the north side of the Oka River, thought to be one of the water barriers the Russian government could use to hold back Wagner forces, which allegedly number between 25 and 50,000, which is admittedly a pretty vague information. So that's the picture on the ground. Now let's talk about the possibilities, of which I see three. And keep in mind that the stated political goals of the Wagner Group is to overthrow the defense minister and high command, which they see as incompetent. There is no mention so far of President Vladimir Putin being in the crosshairs himself. This does not mean the ultimate goal isn't different from the stated public goal. That is just the information we have. So just want to get that out of the way and say that at the very beginning. So the first possibility is that the situation was resolved without further bloodshed. Prigozhin, which is thought to be a longtime friend of Putin's, clearly wants Sergei Shoigu's job as the Russian defense minister. Putin and Russia believe that the war in Ukraine is a war for the future of the Russian state, since this rebellion clearly creates a huge opportunity for Ukraine and puts all the gains made at the cost of enormous lives and resources at risk. It is definitely a possibility that Vladimir Putin will attempt to negotiate an end to the situation as quickly as possible, likely in the form of arresting Shoigu and Gerasimov and handing over control of the Ministry of Defense to Prigozhin. This seems a little far-fetched, but keep in mind that the parties at play here all appear to be Russian patriots, so both sides would probably like to achieve their goals with the least amount of bloodshed, and also This is Russia. Weird shit like this happens in Russia all the time. This isn't coups and civil wars aren't anything new to the Russian nation. Considering Wagner is already in the Moscow region and has crossed the river Oka, there isn't much standing between Wagner and the Kremlin. We can dive further into the personal relationship questions surrounding that in the next video, probably when we get a little more information. But doing this option would allow the situation to be resolved quickly so Russia can continue the war effort, arguably under better leadership. Yes, Prigozhin is just a businessman, and on its face, he has no more experience running a ministry or a military ministry than Shoigu does. But to give the man credit, he has been on the front lines where these other political leaders have not. He constantly listens to battlefield commanders and is likely has a much better picture of the frontline situation. Hence, he might be more efficient at the job. This option is the worst outcome for Ukraine, I will say. Because, obviously a quick end to this rebellion that results in potentially better military leadership just isn't ideal. Second, Russia dissolves into an all-out civil war. If Wagner cannot cut a deal or capture the Kremlin quickly, Moscow can muster enough troops and support to combat the threat. This is already looking bad, though, for the current Russian government. As previously stated, advanced Wagner units are not far from Moscow. There isn't much in their way, and the troops holding down the checkpoints on the roadways are primarily Rosgvardia units, which is a military police force. They do not have the training or morale to hold off the advance of a sophisticated, highly trained force. Keep in mind, Wagner is primarily made up of ex-VDV airborne along with Spetsnaz units. So these are the best of Russian troops and Russian commanders that, quit the Russian military because they were done with the corruption and whatnot and joined the private force because they felt like they can do some good there. So they are, Russian patriots. They're highly trained. They have the morale definitely on their side. But to say that, so far, in the hundreds of kilometers of the Wagner road trip, the majority of these checkpoints have already either cut and run, allowed Wagner to pass, or have straight up surrendered. So there is also the dynamic of the Russian military on the front lines, which has basically up to this point allowed everything to happen, signaling that Russian troops and commanders might, by and large, defer to taking the side of Wagner, which has positioned themselves as the party that cares more about the lives of the common soldier, or at least politically, that is the portrayal that they have been giving out to the average Russian soldier and the Russian public as well. If civil war does break out, however, this is the best outcome for Ukraine, which will rapidly attempt to take advantage of the situation and launch an offensive at the weakest point in Russian lines, wherever that may be. The third and final option, which at this point might be the most likely, is a rapid deposal of the current Russian government in place of a military dictatorship headed probably by Prigozhin himself. Like I said, Wagner units have blown through every checkpoint and don't appear to be slowing down. Based on Putin's public statements, which, keep in mind, this is politics, he is on the side of the defense ministry. So based on his public statements, he is taking that side. He's not taking Prigozhin's side. It is easy to imagine a case that if Wagner successfully overthrows the defense ministry, why not continue on with taking the presidency? I am unsure of the implications here with the Ukraine war. Prigozhin has made some interesting statements about the war being started with a lie, but it's widely believed that the entire Russian political apparatus is on the same page with the necessity of the Ukraine war, not necessarily its execution, though. So my default assumption is that if Prigozhin becomes a military dictator, he will either keep executing the war and try to get a peace deal / ceasefire that results in keeping all the current Russian gains, potentially giving some land back to Ukraine if it means a peace deal, Keep in mind, this is my opinion and my read of the situation. So obviously, I could be wrong, and this is a rapidly developing situation. I will do my best to keep you guys up to date. I'm actually in the middle of a move right now, so that could come in the form of a long, comprehensive video in the next 2 to 3 days. As soon as the situation has climaxed and we have all the accurate information. So for now, that is all from me. Thank you guys for joining, and until next time.